Hi, Joey. How are you?
I am very well, thanks, Amanda.
Welcome to the Dear Thrive interview series, where we deep dive into a variety of topics, really touching on the relevant modern work life today. And we speak to amazing coaches and advisors that we have on the platform who've built real expertise over the years on specific topics. So I'm really happy that we've got Joey Ballantyne today, who is the founder of Grit and Grace Collective. She is a strategic leader and a Washington, D.C. ex diplomat turned professional coach for neurodivergent women. Welcome, Joey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Fantastic. Let's dive right in. Now, I have just touched on a little bit of your career, but you've really had a remarkable career. Can you just draw out a few things that you are really proud of over the years?
Well, thank you. I guess when you're having the career, you don't realize that it's going to be remarkable at some point. But I do have to pinch myself when I look back at my CV and it reflects so many of the things that I was hoping that I would get to do when I did my career planning as a young person. I think for me, I've been really proud to be able to work with some of Australia and the world's biggest organisations on their performance and helping them to improve their performance. And I've been able to do that from lots of different countries. So I've been able to work in the UK, I've been able to work in Asia, I've been able to work in the US, in Australia. And I love travel. And I think to be able to work in a way with all of those different cultures, that's probably the thing that gave me the biggest buzz, and probably the thing that I'm most proud of, that I was able to bring a skill set that was in demand enough for me to be able to have those amazing experiences in my life, not just my job.
Amazing. Can you maybe specifically the skill sets that you've gathered within your roles, and obviously working for global organizations as well, there's a particular talent that you have and the ability to be able to work with different cultures, build resilience, etc. What does that look like for you?
I'm uh, I'm like sort of a management consultant by trade, right? So the that type of work requires that you get up to speed really, really quickly with the client's particular organization, their language, their culture, their operating model, their business strategy, and then what it is that you actually need to do. So I'm pretty quick at gathering all of that context in order to then pretty quickly figure out what's the role that I need to play. But what I found is, generally speaking, leaders want to implement some sort of change, or they want to try and solve some sort of a problem, but it's difficult for them to communicate that to their staff or develop something that people immediately understand. So I'm quite a good translator, if that makes sense. So I've enjoyed, and what I do is I work with senior leaders to understand what is on their mind, what they're trying to achieve. Does it sound logical to me? Like, I'm a very run of the mill, middle of the bell curve type of a person, average Joe. So if I can't understand what they're trying to achieve, then I just work with them to clarify some of those details and get it to a point where either the problem's really clear, or the solution is really clear, or the process is going to be really clear, so that then we can start to engage more of the people that need to be part of that change. And so then I work with, like, the rank and file to help them understand what the leaders' intentions are and what they are wanting from those people. So I act as a bit of a facilitator, or a bit of a translator, because really so much just gets lost in translation, and we're all so busy, and we all have our own individual brains and our own individual perspectives, that the chances of us all actually understanding each other straight away are very, very low. And so what I do is try and minimize the time it takes for a a project of sorts to sort of get off and running, and try and minimize the conflict and the negative feelings that it might bring up, by making sure that people have clarity and they have comprehension about what's going on. So I guess from a skill set, they're the sorts of things that I've seen that I bring to those organisations.
Wonderful. And what what happened? You changed course in your career. Can you describe that?
Yeah, yeah. So look, I'd had 20, 25 years in, climbing the ranks in a sort of a this way and that way. And actually, you did ask what am I really proud of? The last really big job I did was in Washington, D.C., and I was the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner, which is the most senior role in Washington, working in the Australian Embassy with all of the other Australian government departments. And our role was to promote trade and investment between Australia and the US. So it was a dream job, but it was a very high profile job. I had a lot of FaceTime, hosting events or meetings or coaching clients, coaching teams, and the work itself wasn't the thing that sort of bothered me. It was, and had been over the years, the way I worked seemed to always be just a little bit at odds with the way other people were expecting from me. So, as a consultant, when I was, jumping in and out of projects, that it kind of suited, whatever I came up with. People were like, "Oh, wow, that's really great," and I just thought I was doing really well. But when I sort of was in an organization for long enough for people to map my full style, there were just so many points of disconnect, and I'd say something and then I'd be told I was too direct, or I would, you know, I'd see things that other people couldn't see and they thought I was being critical and negative, and then 4 weeks later they would realize what I'd seen. So there were these funny disconnects, Amanda, and along with a few other life changes, I just I think got to a point of burnout where I had been trying to fit in and like trying the guesswork. It was like there was this manual, work manual that nobody ever gave me. And so I was always like second guessing and double checking and lots of extra mental processing over and above just doing the job, which was always a big job, always a complex job. But imagine just another 25% tax on top where it was taking up a lot more energy because of the way that I worked, and I couldn't make sense of that. So, with a little bit of support from a very dear friend and colleague that I had worked on the board of a not for profit, um, she's a clinical psychologist, and I asked her if she thought it would be useful for me to get a sort of a neuro assessment done. Like, is there something that in the way that I process information that is different, not necessarily less, but is different. And she said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so the burnout was sort of happening as a result of all of this sort of build up of like nervous system dysregulation. Then a number of other things that were going on in my life that I thought life's just gotten all too complicated. I just want to like start again. And then I got assessed as autistic, and um, that then led to a little bit more burnout where I was able to just kind of like, I guess, fully hit the wall. That is when I decided I'm not going back into that corporate world. I'm going to work with humans. I want to work with individuals that I know I can get immediate feedback from. If I'm doing a good job, I'll get it there and then. If I'm not quite nailing it, I'll get it there and then, and I can adapt and I can develop and grow in a much more dynamic, real-time situation versus this corporate experience where they wait all year to tell you that you're doing something wrong, and then it hits you like a ton of
So
bricks.
true. Oh gosh.
Yeah, so that's when I decided to create Grit and Grace Collective. I figured, well, if I got that far professionally, there's obviously a really big toolkit that I've got that I want to share with other people. And I'm really passionate about women in the workforce and trying to keep women moving up and not falling out of traditional workplaces because they too are burned out or frustrated. Um, and that led to like what I'm doing now, which is the most satisfying, rewarding work I've ever done.
Oh, Joey, thank you for sharing your story. I think it's a remarkable realization after a really strong and potentially high pressured career. I mean, management consulting is it's a difficult lifestyle, right? And I'm curious. I have a lot of questions for you, and I'm going to try to make this succinct. I'm curious as to your thought process after your diagnosis, how that changed for you when you reflect back on your work.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think there's two parts to the answer. One is I just got a lot closer to what it is that I bring to a professional setting. Like, what are my superpowers,
Mm,
and what's the stuff that I'm just not good at, and I'm not ever going to be good at. You know, regardless of whether we're neurodivergent or not, everybody has sort of a set of skills that's unique to them. So I got really, really clear on what I bring to the table and started really staying centered to that and being really honest and really proud of that professionally. Um, and then the other thing is it completely changed the way that I live my life. Like,
mm,
my nervous system was so dysregulated so regularly. I would just used to have all these sort of boom and bust cycles. So I'd work all week, crash on the weekend, or do these long hours and then crash. And when I would crash, it was like not just a nap, it was a comatose state of
mm.
sleep. So I learned that, I learned all about the nervous system. I hadn't even taken any notice of that before. And now I very much live every day quite in touch with what's going on in my body and making different decisions. So instead of, say, society says, work from 8 till 6 or 9 till 5, I don't do that. I do not wake up with a lot of energy. If I have obligations, it creates a level of stress. So I've made a deliberate decision to start my workday at 10, for example. Now, I do stuff before 10. I'm up early enough, but I've realized that if I don't have all of that pressure too early, it gives me time to just get myself in order.
Mm.
But then come, like, by 3 o'clock, I'm like, my real hyper focus productivity zone is basically from 3 till 7 p.m. So
Mm.
I now know that. So I know that in the morning it's okay to go for a long walk with my puppy, or take a bit of time out during the day to do a meditation, or pop to the shops. Just make sure that all parts of my life are staying in order, rather than my work being incredibly important and under control, but the rest of my life being like a shit show. Um, so yeah, I have lots of little, I suppose, rituals now, and it comes to the self care. It's just like, right, what does my body need right now? Because this is a long game. It's like
Mm.
a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, what great realization. And I wonder, you were late diagnosed autism, and if you were talking to someone else who is considering getting diagnosed or experiencing similar challenges to yourself, how would you advise them?
Yeah, well, there's plenty of us, because 80% of women are diagnosed after the age of 18. So it's coming up really
Mm.
often now because of the awareness of the different presentation that women have of neurodivergence than, say, young boys who get picked up really early in the diagnostic process. But what I would say, it absolutely is an important discovery journey. Um, th- that you should definitely go on. I think the better you know yourself and can accept yourself, the more enjoyable your life will be. The the area of neurodivergence is really accepting, as in whether you have a clinical diagnosis or not is a bit irrelevant. Some people um, are quite keen not to have a diagnosis
Mm.
for their own personal reasons, and others are really keen to have a diagnosis. Some can't afford that option, so it's quite widely acknowledged that if you identify as being neurodivergent, then you are. It's your brain, it's your body, and really words like autism and ADHD and dyslexia are really just labels. They're just words that have been, created by the medical system in order to kind of group like individuals with like needs,
Mhm.
particularly as it comes to medication or other sort of therapeutic interventions. But to me, I think it is like a rainbow, and everybody has their own unique neurodivergence, that is personal, and you're the only one that can go on that journey. I mean, I still have some people that will say, "Oh, I can't believe that you're autistic." Okay, well, that's fine
Mm.
for you, but you're not in my head. You're not in my body.
Mhm.
You haven't had my past, um, and I'm grateful that I've been able to develop those strategies and live a resilient life. But it it's for those that don't identify as being neurodivergent, it's problematic to make assumptions about what it is. So
Yeah.
if you do, I think you might be neurodivergent, then be really kind to yourself and supportive of yourself, because it will be entirely your unique experience that has really nothing to do with anyone else.
Great. And with Grit and Grace Collective that you have now started, you're focusing specifically on women. Was that a conscious choice? What was your decision
Yeah.
making?
I mean, to be honest, I do have some male clients,
Mm.
and I'm not a closed shop, but my first signature offering is a group coaching program for women. And I guess I just feel really strongly about women in leadership, and that we needed support, and that I could design something that was even more powerful the more niche it was.
Mm.
So it's already niche from a neurodiversity point of view, but if it can be niche in a female friendly, um, or non-binary way, then that would be where I could make the greatest contribution. And what I've noticed, Amanda, is from running my program for the last year, I've had over 70 people come through the
So,
program, a part of the collective, in my very first year. So I'm super proud of that. But I had originally built out sort of some coursework. So there's some self-paced videos and learning and worksheets, and I'm like really proud of that. And then we jump on a weekly call for 1 hour as a group. And that experience is the thing that seems to be
mm.
the game changer. Like the 1 hour calls each week with each other is the most palpable part of the program. Like they love the coursework. The coursework's incredibly practical, it's
Mhm.
incredibly relevant, but the community side of the experience, like I don't really even want to call it a program anymore. It's like an experience that people go on. They just commit to themselves for 12 weeks, and then they're surrounded by other unlike minded women. And from the very get
Mhm.
go, there's no guessing or hidden agendas. It's like boom from right from the get go. So when groups finish their 12 weeks, it's quite a sad, and
Oh.
they're all a bit sad. So I've had to create a few things on a monthly basis, that once you're in the collective, then you can join a monthly meeting or a monthly mini masterclass. Um, I can't even remember what the question was, but that's that's sort of what I'm offering the world. Oh, the women, yes. So women, I think, particularly value being around other women. I think we
Mm.
have a natural nurturing sense, and are we do experience the world differently to men. Um, but I'll never say no to a male client, but it's
Mm.
not where I suppose my passion is.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I wonder if you can share what are the types of challenges that women are coming to you with?
Pretty much the majority of people that join my collective have got to the end of their tether. they're,
Mm.
they're a bit buggered, they're a bit knackered, they're tired, or they are fully burnt out from the same type of experience that I had had, which is these, years and years of masking and camouflaging and feelings of confusion and ambiguity, and then that creates anxiety, which leads to anger and frustration, all these sort of
Mm.
unhealthy emotions on a sort of pervasive basis. So they're usually really um, worn out. That's kind of the starting point. Um, there's also a piece around identity. So I now know this about myself. It makes sense to me because I know what's been going on in my brain and body. But what do I do now with that from a professional point of view? How do I talk about it? If I talk about it, um,
Mm.
who am I if I'm not my mask? Am I camouflage? So there's a whole
Yeah,
piece
right.
around identity. Um, and the sort of main challenge of like, what am I going to do for the rest of my working life? Am
Mm.
I going to keep doing what I've been doing in the way that I've been doing it? Or am I going to keep doing what I've been doing, but in a different way? Or am I going to change the whole lot and do something different in a completely different way? If that makes sense. So
Mm.
navigating that career plan moving forward is also kind of like that third key challenge that they generally have across the board.
I think it sounds to me like you play such a powerful role in these women's lives, right? They're at the end of their tether and they probably explored a whole bunch of different options before. And to find a community that you've now created where they can be open and honest, where they can share their frustrations and whatever else, it sounds like that program is a really pivotal part of their sort of next stage and
Yeah.
a real point in time. I wonder the conversations that you're fostering, maybe three things that they're uncovering about themselves would be really helpful. How do you sort of unpack that?
Um, one, they get clearer that they do have superpowers,
Mm.
and yep, they don't need to be good at everything, but they do have superpowers. Um, two, that it's not always them that's the problem. What I
Mm.
mean by that is today's workplace has become very complacent and um, lazy. So standard good practice, let alone best practice, is not even like a consistent experience these days in most organizations. There's very few that really value good or best practice. And so the
Mm.
problem is that good practice is good for everyone, but bad practice is particularly bad for neurodivergent people who need clarity, who need order, who need to know exactly what their role is, where they start, where they end, what's the job that needs to be done, why
Mhm.
am I going to this meeting, what happened in that meeting. All those sort of old fashioned things like having agendas and giving enough time to consider information or writing minutes or being clear about someone's role, all of that stuff is not something that neurodivergent people made up that they need. And now they're called accommodations or adjustments.
Mm.
That's all just standard stuff that everybody should be leading with. So we spend a fair bit of time reconciling the fact that, hey, actually, we aren't the problem. Well, maybe we can be part of the solution by, holding a mirror up to situations where there could be an improvement in the way something's being done. And that can be a bit hard. I think some people feel that they're not maybe they're as confident or as courageous to do that. But as soon as they put dip their toe in the water, like everybody around them says, "Yeah, why don't we spell out acronyms?" Or
Mm.
"What is the point of this meeting anyway?" So that's the second one. Um, my program's called Empowered, and I think the third thing that they work to develop is that level of empowerment, that they actually have much more control over their life experience than maybe they're allowing themselves to have. Things like choices about where you work, what type of work you do, how you communicate your needs, your opinions. So the word that kind of comes up a lot in the feedback forms is confidence. Like, I have so much more confidence now. But
Mm.
confidence comes when you are empowered, right? You have that trust in yourself. So that's what I'd say is the key highlights that I watch over that 12-week period.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm presumably you can see that progression over time if they're clearly giving that feedback. That's amazing.
Yeah, because I'm up to the sixth group now, and so I watch this. There's definitely a uniqueness to each of the cohorts,
Mhm.
but there's a fairly predictable transformation that takes place, and that's by design. The order in which I've put the topics and the problem solving that needs to be done, and I've just got to be careful not to sort of like let the cat out of the bag too early and say, we're going to be probably talking about that in week 7, because I know you're going to get there, but if I give it to you now, you're not discovering it for yourself. So
Mm.
yeah, it's like I said, it's very rewarding, because for the first few weeks, obviously I drive a lot of the conversation. People are still getting to know each other. But then by kind of midway, I'm just almost another one of them, and I get the benefit of all of their experience and their
Mm.
skills. So it's a kind of a cool job when you just get to continue to develop, um, even though you're supposed to be the coach.
I love it. I love it. And on the flip side, I mean, you mentioned organizations making accommodations. If you were working with organizations on the other side, what are 3 things that you would look to implement, or how they can better support
Mm.
neurodiverse women?
Yeah, and this is really important because it's the two sides of the same coin: is the individual and then the system within which they work. I think the first thing is that we are a neurodiverse society, so
Mm.
everybody is different. It's not neurodivergent people and neurotypical people. That's still too binary. We're all just human beings with very personal and unique blueprints. So think about ways in which to support all differences, not just you know neurodivergent differences. Um, there's a really cool playbook as part of the Atlassian team plays. If anyone's listening to this, the company Atlassian has a playbook or a set of plays. So you just go into Google and say Atlassian playbook, and they've got a whole bunch of like best practices for how to work together. And
Mm.
a thing that they've got in there is a template called My User Manual. It'd be just like everybody has their own user manual. The
Mm.
CEO or the secretary of the department has a unique user manual, as does every other person in or outside of the building. And I think the more we can bring that into the dialogue of the organizations, like, oh, so let me know how you prefer to work, or in this particular scenario, this is kind of like my preference. And we just make that sort of part and parcel of the work conversation. I think that would be um, a huge additive.
Mm.
We replacing all of those assumptions or standard ways of working with seek first to understand. Good Stephen Covey there. Um, and that's something that can be done like tomorrow. That you don't need to invest in that. You just need to start doing it and hope that it catches on.
Mm.
I think the other thing where it comes to sort of neurodivergence in particular, um, neurodivergent people have sensory sensitivities that are different to neurotypical people. So they might be hypersensitive or hyposensitive to any number of factors, whether that be light or taste or touch or their proprioception or the interoception or their vestibular. Like there's a few things that I've learned, but you've got all the five senses as well as a few others where the physical environment can have a material impact on a neurodivergent person. So, for example, a client of mine was getting migraines because someone in her area was wearing a very strong perfume in I think a jasmine, which is quite a common aversion. And yeah, so she kind of used the support of the group to give some feedback that actually causes migraines. There was a little bit of like, it's a human right to be able to wear your your own perfume, and she said no, it's a human right not to get a migraine in my workplace. But just being cognizant that quieter environments, working from home is a really positive thing for neurodivergent people, and acknowledging that yes, we need to have a social fabric at work, and that does require some in-person engagement, but being a little more strategic about that doesn't mean you need to be in the office 5 days a week to achieve, you know, harmonious work relationships. So the environment's a big part. And I think the third thing really is, the leadership level, management level. The middle manager level is where I guess the rubber hits the road for most employees.
Mm.
Is what is their manager's style and support for them. And so if you want to fast track those types of conversations about our personal user manual and fast track that acceptance that the environment is a construct that should be more fluid, then those managers need to be educated and trained in whatever skills they need in order to lead people in a neuro-inclusive way. So
Mm.
that's where I think they'd be the three things that delivered through that manager training that I think would make the biggest difference.
Yeah, great. I think that's super practical advice. And I wonder, do you think at this stage, is there any organizations doing this well? You mentioned Atlassian, and I think putting a manual together is certainly one thing, but deliberate practice, and you called out middle managers, deliberate practice of being able to train, um, uh, exposure and experience, and opening up those conversations is quite another. Are there any other examples that come to mind?
Um, and actually, like, who's doing it really well? I don't. I don't really know because I'm only
Mm,
one little person doing my little thing. I think it does always come back to, if you've got a good leader, you're going to have a good experience. And so the higher up that quality leader goes, the
mm,
better the experience. But because mostly, they say the fish rots from the head. So if you've got really, really strong quality leadership at the top, you tend to have that same culture flow down. So that would be the other thing, is just, very senior
mm.
leadership around this will drive um, the right culture of an organization.
Yeah, great.
But there's always a bad egg here and there, and it's the luck of the draw on who you get.
It's so true. Hopefully, you get one of those good ones.
Yeah.
And it's really, you're right. It's really obvious that you see a lot of people gravitating towards great leaders, who look after and obviously listen to their employees. I have one last question for you. Is what does thriving in work life mean to you?
Um, I'm a really creative person, so I love it when I can have a bit of an idea, and it's got some sort of commercial um, outcome eventually that I
Mm.
can really get creative with and innovative and productive with. So, I'm sort of like I love working, and I love working on the working, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like, so this morning I was talking to my assistant, and apparently I'm missing one piece of software to do our email marketing. But then when I looked at that, I was like, but there's an overlap with that one and that one. Can't we just buy this one? And so I thrive on that sort of thing, where if I can take three applications and roll it into one and go boom, that saves so much more time, or it's a better quality.
Mm.
um, that's what drives me. Like, that's how I thrive
That's your
in the type
management
of work.
consulting coming out.
Exactly. um, and that's sort of the work I like to do. And I mean, I love the coaching, but it doesn't hurt to get all that beautiful feedback, and that knowing that you're doing something that's positive for the world and positive for
Mm.
individual people. you know that that's that helps me thrive for sure.
Amazing. Thank you, Joey, for sharing your experience, and congratulations on the success of your first year of Grit and Grace Collective. I look forward to continuing to work with you, and you
Absolutely.
helping so many more neurodivergent women. Thank
That's the
you.
plan. Thanks, Amanda. This has been a great chat.
See you.